So it's been a while. I haven't made a video in about a year. But today I'm finally ready to show you my latest project. It's called Pinehaven, a horror story game where the player is a night shift worker at an American gas station. And yes, gas station. My British self wants to call it a petrol station, but for the sake of the masses, I'll call it a gas station in this video. It's a rules-based video game with a strong story behind it. And in this video, I'm going to share all of the things I've worked on so far and what I have learnt along the way. If you're new here, please subscribe to see updates on my project. It also helps to motivate me to make more videos like this in the future. The first thing I needed to nail down was the style of the game. If you've seen any of my previous videos, most of my projects have been in a low poly or stylized fashion. I'd never really worked on realistic graphics or those that don't look overly toony. At first I wanted Pinehaven to look similar to those old-fashioned PlayStation games, but I eventually settled on a black and white style complemented by lower quality textures. I think this really gives the game a grungy look, which adds to the atmosphere I'm trying to create. With Pinehaven being very much a story-driven horror game, I knew I would need to build a comprehensive, reusable dialogue system that would give me the flexibility to implement the game's story. This was initially a challenge as I had not made something this complex before. However, I knew at a minimum I would need to have the speaker name, the lines of dialogue, and of course, the voiceover. I'd love to briefly share how I did this. Through my dialogue manager script, I'm able to create assets which can then be linked wherever I use the script. This is great because the system is as reusable as it is flexible. I don't need to keep programming new scripts every time I want to implement a new cutscene or non-player character. I simply need to trigger the dialogue manager to play a list of dialogue assets. These can then be attached through an array. This really is a great solution to game dialogue. If you would like a more in-depth video covering how I made this and how you can create something similar, just let me know in the comments section down below and I'll create a full video on it. As I flesh out the story of the game, I'm using 11 labs for audio. While I intend to hire a real voice actor, my approach here is to test each part of the story and see what works and doesn't. From the standpoint of saving money, using an AI voiceover during this testing period seems to me like a great decision. Sound effects are really important in any game that you make, but even more so in a horror game where the atmosphere you build up is a determining factor in whether or not a player continues with your game or recommends it to others. And no, I'm not just talking about having one audio track playing over the whole scene. What I'm working on doing is having 3D spatial sounds in every corner of my game. It makes the game feel more volumetric and dynamic, more like a living piece rather than something rigid and static. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think you probably can get the idea from what I just said. So I hope you can hear what I was talking about from that sample clip. If you have any suggestions about how I can improve this, please let me know in the comments section down below. With regards to player movement, I'm using Cinemachine for the camera and then I used a first-person controller asset. I figure there is no need to recreate something if you can work with something that's a lot easier and free. I actually used this asset in one of my first ever projects way back in Unity 2017. This asset was no longer available when I started Pinehaven, but I managed to upgrade the package to Unity 6. I then built an interactive system around it that allows me to implement item-based interactions based on raycasts. For my viewers that are not game devs, this means that I can trigger actions based on where the player is looking. So that's a roundup of most of the things I've done so far. The next big thing I need to do is get the Steam page up and running so I can start gathering wishlists. I think before I can do that though, I need to gather more screenshots and implement more visual impact gameplay mechanics, which I will do in the coming weeks. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please like, subscribe and consider leaving a comment down below. Thanks for watching.